I was sitting in a county assistant's office applying for food stamps, 33 years old, living in a women's shelter after my husband drained our accounts and vanished with my own sister. The caseworker typed in my social security number and stopped. She stared at her screen for a long moment, then picked up the phone. 2 hours later, a man in a $3,000 suit walked through the door and asked for me by name. Before I continue with my story, it really helps to know that someone out there is listening. So, if this is resonating with you in any way, or if it's simply caught your attention, please let me know in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from or just say hello. There's something incredibly comforting about knowing I'm not alone in this. Thanks a lot. Now, back to the story. The first time I found her earring in our bed, I told myself it must have been mine. This was a Thursday in October 3rd, weeks before everything ended. I'd come home early from my shift at the clinic. We were a small veterinary practice, just me and Dr. Keller and 2 techs because I'd started getting migraines. Again, Nathan wasn't supposed to be home until 6 o'clock. He worked in pharmaceutical sales, which meant a lot of driving, a lot of long days, a lot of overnight trips to Atlanta or Charlotte. I changed out of my scrubs, took to aspirin, and got into bed to sleep it off. That's when I felt it under the pillow. A small gold hoop with a tiny pearl, delicate, not mine. I turned it over in my fingers. My mind did what minds do when they're not ready for something. It made excuses. Maybe it was mine and I'd forgotten. Maybe it was old. Maybe the cleaning lady. Except we didn't have a cleaning lady anymore. Not since Nathan said we needed to cut back. I put it in my jewelry box and forgot about it. Or I tried to. Nathan and I had been married for 7 years. We met when I was 25 and he was 28 at a friend's birthday party at a rooftop bar in Charlotte. He was handsome in the way that made other women look at me with surprise when they saw us together. Not because I was unattractive, but because he had that quality, that shine that made you feel like the only person in the room when he was talking to you. I know now that this is a skill, not a gift. That some people work at it the way others work at a golf swing. He told me later that he'd noticed me standing by the railing looking out at the city lights and that I seemed sad. I wasn't sad. I was tired. I'd worked a 12-hour shift and my feet hurt and I was thinking about whether I could leave without being rude. But sad was more romantic. I suppose sad was something he could fix. We got married 18 months later in the backyard of my mother's house in Ashford, which is about 40 minutes outside Charlotte. Small town. Old money that had mostly dried up, old names that still meant something to people who cared about such things. My mother was Barbara Caldwell née Richardson, and the Richardsons had owned the mill that employed half the county before it closed in the 80s. By the time I was born, there wasn't much left but the house and the reputation and my mother's conviction that we were still somebody. Carrie was always better at playing somebody than I was. My sister was 2 years younger and had gotten all the things I hadn't. The height, the cheekbones, the ability to walk into a room and make people want to impress her. She married young at 22 to a man named Bradley Fisk who came from actual money. New money, but still money. And for about 6 years, she lived the life my mother had always wanted for us. Big house in Myers Park. Charity Guyaz, a photo in the Observer's social pages at least once a year. Then Bradley left her for his dental hygienist and moved to Scottsdale. Carrie came back to Ashford like a wounded bird returning to the nest, and my mother welcomed her with the kind of attention she'd never given me. It made sense in a way. Carrie was the one who needed saving. I was just the one who was fine. I was always fine. When Carrie moved back, Nathan and I had been married for 4 years and were living in a small house in Huntersville, which was close enough to Charlotte for his work and close enough to Ashford for the family obligations that my mother never let me forget. Carrie needed help getting back on her feet, so she came to stay with us for 8 months. I should have minded more than I did, but the truth was I liked having her there at first. We'd never been close as children. She was my mother's daughter and I was my father's. And after he left when I was 12, that division only deepened. But in those early weeks, with Carrie sleeping in our guest room and crying on our couch and drinking wine with me while Nathan was on the road, I thought maybe we were finally becoming sisters. She got a job at a real estate agency. She started dating again. She found an apartment in Charlotte close to the South End and moved out just before Christmas. I helped her hang curtains and organize her closet, and she hugged me at the door and said, I don't know what I would have done without you. I believed her. The second thing I found was a text message. This was February 4th, months before the end. Nathan had left his phone on the bathroom counter while he was in the shower, and it buzzed with a message. I glanced at it automatically. I wasn't checking up on him. I was just there and saw Kareen's name. Last night was perfect. I miss you already. I read it 3 times. My hands went cold. I could hear the shower running, the steam curling over the top of the curtain, Nathan humming something. Under his breath, I put the phone back exactly where it had been and walked out of the bathroom. There are moments when you know something and moments when you refuse to know it. I spent the next 2 weeks in the second category. I told myself the text was innocent. Sisters sent texts like that to their brothers-in-law, didn't they? Maybe they'd gone to dinner while Nathan was in Charlotte for work. Maybe they'd gone to a movie. Maybe perfect was just how Kareen talked. I didn't ask Nathan about it. I didn't ask Kareen about it. I kept going to work, kept feeding the dogs and cats, and one memorable iguana named Gerald kept coming home and cooking dinner and lying next to my husband in the dark. But I started paying attention. Nathan's work trips got longer. His phone was always face down on the table. When I asked him about his day, he answered in summaries. Fine, busy. You know how it is. Rather than stories, he used to tell me stories. Used to do impressions of the doctors he called on, make me laugh until my stomach hurt. I noticed he'd stopped touching me casually. The hand on my lower back when we passed in the kitchen. The kiss on the top of my head while I was reading. All the small physical punctuation of a marriage gone. I noticed my sister stopped calling me. We used to talk at least twice a week. Long rambling conversations about nothing in particular. Now it was just texts, brief and practical. Mom's birthday is Sunday. Are you bringing the cake? I noticed that when we did see each other, family dinners, my mother's house, Kareen wouldn't meet my eyes. And Nathan was careful to stay on the opposite side of the room from her, which I might have found reassuring if I hadn't started to understand that people who had nothing to hide didn't need to try so hard to look innocent. One night in April, I told Nathan I was going to visit an old college friend in Raleigh for the weekend. I packed a bag, kissed him goodbye, drove 30 minutes up I-85, and then came back. I parked 2 blocks from our house and walked. Kareen's silver Audi was in our driveway. I sat on the neighbor's lawn, hidden by their boxwood hedge, and waited. I don't know why I didn't just go inside. I could have confronted them. I could have screamed, thrown things, made a scene the whole neighborhood would remember. Instead, I sat in the wet grass, feeling the damp soak through my jeans, and waited to see what would happen. An hour later, they came out the front door together. Nathan's arm was around her waist. Kareen was laughing at something he'd said, her head tilted back, her hand on his chest. He pulled her close and kissed her. Not a quick kiss, not a friendly kiss, but the kind of kiss you give someone when you've kissed them 1,000 times before. I watched my husband kiss my sister in the doorway of my house, and something inside me went very quiet. I didn't confront them. I went to Raleigh after all, drove the rest of the way in a daze, and spent the weekend at my friend Amy's apartment. I told her I was just tired, that work had been hard, that I needed a break. She believed me or pretended to, and I slept on her couch and stared at her ceiling and tried to figure out what to do. The thing you have to understand is that I wasn't prepared for this.